The long-awaited national security trial of Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai has begun amid a heavy police presence aimed at ensuring safety and that nothing disrupts the proceedings. The founder of the Apple Daily newspaper stands accused of conspiring to collude with foreign forces under the national security legislation and taking part in conspiracy to publish seditious materials under the city's colonial-era sedition law. Britain called for Hong Kong to release Jimmy Lai ahead of the trial on charges including the United States. Jimmy faces up to life in prison if convicted on national security charges, which rights activists have called baseless. Well, DD India correspondent Andrew Wood joins us for more from Hong Kong. Andrew, now can you provide details on the charges against Jimmy Lai and the specific national security offences he's accused of during this trial?
As you say, it's the national security law is the main legislation under which these charges have been laid. There are also the seditious charges as well under the colonial era, the former British laws. Those concentrate, it's believed, mainly on articles published in his newspaper, the Apple Daily, and comments that he himself made or articles that he himself wrote. And there's no way of getting around it that Apple Daily was very critical of Beijing. It was very critical of the way that the Hong Kong government had been dealing with protests and had been dealing with requests to improve democratic freedoms in Hong Kong. So that's that part of it. And as I say, the rest is the national security law, which is at the moment well, it hasn't been used a lot in court. So far, all the cases that have been held, there's been a 100% conviction rate. In this case, the judges are going to be chosen, or have been chosen rather, by the Hong Kong government, in effect, indirectly by Beijing. There's no jury trial like you would get usually in Hong Kong.
Right.
And Mr. Lai's requests to have a top lawyer from Britain, a barrister, who would in theory be able to practice in Hong Kong courts, certainly in the traditional part of the Hong Kong courts, those were denied by Beijing.
Okay. Andrew, how has the international community, especially the United Kingdom, responded to Jimmy Lai, his trial, and what calls for his release have been made?
Well, the United Kingdom has the Foreign Secretary, the relatively new Foreign Secretary, David Cameron, who used to be Prime Minister. He's called for the release of Jimmy Lai, and that's partly because, of course, Jimmy Lai is a British citizen. But the Foreign Office in the UK has pointed out that people of Chinese origin, it says, are considered Chinese by the Chinese authorities. They think that's unfair. I mean, certainly the British consulate is sending people along to monitor this trial. Also, the United States has spoken out as well, saying that Jimmy Lai should be freed. And this all goes against, I mean, I think the general view of the West and some other countries as well in Asia is that this goes against what Beijing signed up to at the handover in 1997.
Okay.
Beijing promised it would sustain and preserve the freedoms that people in Hong Kong had enjoyed when Hong Kong was a British colony, and that people on the mainland of China do not. And of course, this national security law seems to have, well, the UK and the US have said basically goes against that agreement.
Okay. Andrew, now can you elaborate on the specific details of the alleged collusion with foreign powers that Jimmy Lai is charged with?
Well, this actually goes back to before the national security law was introduced, and when it was some of it, when it was being considered. Jimmy Lai went to America. He spoke to senior American politicians. At that point, Hong Kong was beginning to crack down on democracy activists and democracy protests, and he argued, he asked, so the allegation is, that he asked the American authorities to think about sanctioning some people in Hong Kong who were behind these crackdowns. So that's considered colluding with a foreign power to interfere with the internal affairs of China, and in particular, obviously, Hong Kong.
All right. On that note, thank you so much, Andrew, for joining in.